And here we are back with MidDay Café. And this is Mike Giannotti here, and I'm with Mr. Scott Moore. And yeah, it's been a couple of weeks, Scott. I was out
Mm-hmm.
with COVID, have my COVID growth.
Mm-hmm. Silver
And
whiskers there. Mm.
yeah, so welcome back. Welcome
I should
everybody
I
who's
should be
listening.
welcoming. Yeah, welcome you
Welcome
back.
me.
Yeah.
So today we got a pretty light session. I don't know what's going on if my transcription's running or not. I just got a brand new bill this morning when I came in. I don't see it on my end, but hopefully we're transcribing. But yeah, we're back with MidDay Cafe, so we'll be kicking back off weekly with this again. And today, though, Scott, I understand you have something you would like to discuss, talk
Mhm.
about, share.
Sure. So we're going to talk about contact center. A couple weeks ago, we talked about call center and some of the lighter features around the native features around contact center, call center. I was going to talk about that a little bit, go in a little bit more detail. Also talk about why we, third party contact center and how that becomes applicable, the reasons and rationale behind the native capabilities and why we would go to third party contact center integration with Teams.
With Teams. There
With
you go.
Teams. Yep.
All right. Well, take it away.
Okay. So sure. So yeah. So just a couple of things we talked about, and just to kind of recap what we talked about last time is, we know that natively in Office 365 we have a couple of things. Well, first of all, you have an auto attendant capability that's there in Office 365 as part of phone system. And then we also have call queues. And really the big thing is, and just to kind of further define those, an auto attendant is like when you call into an organization and that's an IVR. So that picks up the phone and you can get like a corporate directory and then be routed to people. So you can have auto attendants based on, you can actually have multiple, based on you have a dial-in number or a pilot number for that location, typically the main number. And then inside of that, you can actually have call queues, and a call queue is essentially the routing engine as part of that. And your call queues in the Microsoft Office 365 construct, they're rather simple, but they can be complex. So there's a couple of things around that. It's really geared around things that are rather light, like an accounts payable or maybe an internal help desk. But it is a routing engine, and there's a couple of things you can do there. You have different ways of call routing. You can actually do a call route based upon everybody that's available in the call queue. So it will ring everybody, and the first person that picks up would actually answer the call. Or you can do serial. So it's going to ring Alice, then it's going to ring Bob. Alice is not available. It can do a round robin, and then it can also do the longest idle, which is essentially the last person or the person who's been idle the longest, and they would actually get the call route. So you have those there for simple call routing. I've actually seen some pretty complex scenarios. I was actually working in 2017 with this is actually back in the Skype for Business Online days when we had call queues there. Had a grocery store chain. They had 75 call queues for one location. So it was pretty complex. We actually had the Visio out, the call queue structure, because it was, we talk about trees and leaves, in an IVR. It really did look like almost like a family tree with the nesting of all the call queues. So it can get rather complex. But then there's also capabilities, in the auto attendants and the call queues that are not part of natively with Office 365.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the third-party contact center piece comes into play. I'll pause there. Any questions so far, Mike? Any thoughts?
Not for me. I'm just soaking it up.
Okay. So when we talk about third-party integration with call center scenarios, it's really around additional capabilities that have been in that contact center space, and we're talking about things around analytics, call center statistics. If you wanted to have statistics on how many, the speed to answer the call, how long that person took to answer the call or to resolve the solution. There's a whole plethora of analytics that are typically, part of a contact center solution that they've already built those, whether they're canned or customizations for those analytics in the contact center solution. Other things around skill-based routing. So that's another feature that's typically there. So you say, I know you call the parts department, for an auto, and I need to speak to the Chevy parts guy rather than the Ford parts guy. That could be based upon skill-based routing. Call recording scenarios. So a lot of contact center solutions also have call recording embedded into their solutions. So whether it's, public sector, you call the public school system, they want to be able to record those calls, whether it's a bomb threat or an irate parent.
Sure.
As well as, we all know that sometimes we may call an 800 number and we hear that, this call may be recorded for training purposes. Right. So that's the embedded call recording capabilities of those contact center solutions. And then you also have another thing that's called whisper and barge mode. And what does that mean? So in contact center solutions, a lot of times, as we mentioned, this call may be recorded. You can have where your supervisor can actually listen in on the conversation with the call center agent, or barge mode, where they may be able to barge into the call, or come into the call and talk in the call, but they were listening in the background. So those are capabilities that are part of these contact center solutions as part of their piece. Another thing is omni-channel. What does omni-channel mean? But now, it used to be that call centers were just voice, and nowadays it's instant messaging, it's other things. You go to a website and it says contact an agent, and you have an instant messaging chat, on a website. That's actually a contact center solution on the back end. So it's that omni-channel approach of having multiple modalities of communication for contact center solutions. So those are all there as part of the contact center piece. Other things, we're talking about, major organizations, sales organizations that have large contact centers. It's also tying into CRMs, customer relationship management. So the contact center solutions can tie into like Salesforce, Dynamics 365, other CRMs, so that they can pull in customer data as the call comes in. We know sometimes you call in and, they can recognize your telephone number and say, oh, well, you're Scott Moore, because we pulled that from our database. That's a CRM integration. So these are all the things of why we have the contact center solutions as third party, because it's an ecosystem. It's been out there for a while. And we know other PBX platforms, they may have their own embedded contact center solution. Though also this third party ecosystem, it's been out there for a while because they can do, heterogeneous integration with PBXs, meaning they may have been, doing contact center solutions in multiple PBX platforms. So some larger organizations may actually have multiple PBX deployments, multiple types of brands of PBXs, but they may centralize on a single contact center solution. So these guys have been out here for a while. They've just been now extending their capabilities now to the Teams ecosystem. So let's talk about those third parties. I'm going to be agnostic, not name any specific solutions, but I'll just kind of talk about what's out there today. Mm-hmm. So today there's actually 7 systems integrators, or 7 solution providers that have actually certified their solution with Teams today. So that's just 7 that have gone through the certification process, but there's also 13 that are going, an additional 13 that are going through that certification process. Yeah. So there's 20 solutions out there today just in the contact center space with Teams today. And again, I'll just reiterate why so many, because that ecosystem's been there. It's been there for a long time. So it's really just a matter that they, again, are extending their capabilities, building in, and Teams is becoming the thing. So they realize we need to start building our stuff so that it can support Teams as people move to Teams. So other things also, there's also a separate piece around call recording. So Microsoft also has a certification for compliance in call recording. So some contact center solutions may be part of that, because you'll actually see some of the same names as part of the contact center solutions, but we also have point solutions where there are some point solutions that do just call recording and compliance. So that's actually a separate certification. And another thing I'll mention is we talk about the robustness of having these 20 different players in the ecosystem. My analogy, it's kind of like a chocolate chip cookie recipe. Everybody kind of does it a little bit differently on the internal way that they do this. But at the end of the day, it's still a chocolate chip cookie. Everybody's recipe of how they handle contact center. Somebody's going to have this type of sugar, this type of dough, this type of chocolate. But at the end of the day, they all approach it at the end and solve the equation.
So really, it just sounds like if you're looking for more advanced features around contact centers, a lot of the different capabilities that you're discussing, then it really, that's where you're moving beyond just a basic contact center using our built-in capability.
Right.
You're going to move to one of our third party. And then do you have like a listing that we'll be able to provide for people who are tuning in so they can go ahead and take a look at those?
Yep. So I'll provide a list. There's actually 2 web pages to take reference of. One is going to be the Contact Center Solution Certification page.
Yep.
And then the other is also the call recording and compliance certification page. So I will reference those in the blog article.
Awesome.
And they list those 13 and 7 players, and there's actually 8 certified solutions for compliance reporting. So, but yeah, that's typically the way I've approached this in the past is talking through the requirements with customers, trying to get a temperature of where they are, whether they just need a simple queue or an auto attendant. But when they start to say, oh, well, we need some analytics, we need to tie into a CRM, we need call recording, then I pivot that conversation to say, we probably need to pull in a contact center solution and have you talk to them. And again, see if that solution will meet their requirements, because as I mentioned before, that chocolate chip cookie recipe, I've seen some solutions that may not work for some customers. They may not like that particular recipe. So I will typically recommend 3 or 4, and it can be laborious, but it is kind of how the conversation goes. And another thing that it's also pretty evident is a lot of times the people who run the contact center, that's a different business org rather than the telephony people.
Yeah.
So typically it's coming out of the contact center folks who say it's a totally different set of decision makers. And a lot of times in large PBX deployments, what we've seen in the past is you may migrate your users who are not part of the contact center, but the contact center is going to stay in their own little bubble because they have to make that decision to figure out how they would transition to a new PBX platform or telephony platform. So we always realize it's going to be a separate bubble of decisions. Definitely. So,
awesome. Well, cool. So you're going to provide both links, and people should be taking a look, because that's a pretty big ecosystem.
It really is. It's growing. It's crazy. And let us know if there's any questions. But it's definitely a growing ecosystem. It's becoming very mature now, so it's really prime time. And that's the nice part about this is with Teams and the contact center integration. A lot of these contact center solutions, most of these, they build their application so that it supports native integration into Teams. So you have that Teams integration. So Teams, you're still living in Teams to do the contact center piece. Pretty slick.
Very cool. All right. Well, we're going to go ahead, I guess. For those, who tuned in, we want to thank you for joining us. And certainly if you have questions for follow-up, you can post them on the blog post itself or contact myself or Scott. Our links will be in there for LinkedIn. If you have things you'd like us to talk about now that we're kicking back up, please give us a buzz. Let us know. We'd love to talk about it here at MidDay Café. And with that, this is Mike with
Scott.
Bidding everyone have a great day. Take care, and as always, ciao.
We'll see you.